This is the Entrepreneur Podcast, where we have the privilege of interviewing entrepreneurs and business owners here in the Pacific Northwest. I am your host, Isaac Schaefer.
And I am your co-host, Drew West. You ready to get into it, man?
Let's go. All right, guys, we're on. Jennie, welcome. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Yeah.
It's great to see you guys.
How was your holiday?
It's good.
Yeah?
It's very mellow.
Yeah,
which is
ours
good.
too.
That's very good.
It's necessary.
How was your holiday, Andrew?
Oh man, it was a lot. We had a lot of things going on, a lot of people to see, a lot of people wanted to see a baby. So yeah, man, it was mom and dad and my wife's mom and dad, and yeah, it was a lot, but it was a ton of fun. It's always good to see family.
For sure.
Cool. Awesome.
So Jennie, tell us a little bit about yourself and your business.
Okay. Well, I'm Jennie. I'm a born and raised Seattleite, a fourth generation Seattleite. And I also lived in Alaska for 7 years, so I'm sure we'll be talking about that because that's a big part of my business. My business is called Ordinary Adventures, and it started as just a website. And it's still primarily a website, but I do also do travel planning for folks who want some help planning their trip to Alaska. So I'm not a travel agent. I don't book everything. People just pay me, and then I tell them what to do. And people like being told what to do because it's easy. And then they can spend like an hour hanging with me on Zoom and then half an hour booking, and that's all they have to do for their trip. So
That's so rad.
that is pretty sweet. So
yeah, I would definitely do that. If that was like an option for all vacations, I would do that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. It's kind of a different model. Like, people are kind of more familiar with the travel agent model, which is where you don't pay a travel agent. They get commission for what they book for you, although sometimes you pay a deposit to sort of cover their time doing the research. And I don't do any booking for folks. I'm not necessarily opposed to doing that, but there's like a lot of logistics and administrivia kind of behind the scenes to do that. So far I haven't done that.
So where did the idea come from? I mean, obviously you spent 7 years in Alaska, and so you probably fell in love with Alaska, not to put words in your mouth. And
yeah.
Well, I guess maybe take a step back. Tell us a little bit more about what your business is.
Yeah. So my website is all about Washington, Alaska, British Columbia, and the Yukon. So that's kind of like far western Canada. And from the beginning, I was like, I only want to write about things that I know. So a lot of people who have travel websites go to different places and write about them. And that's awesome. That's a great business and an awesome thing to do. But for me, I didn't want to do that. I only wanted to write about stuff that I really knew and that really felt like home. And so that's the two places I've lived and the two places between them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it makes sense. So your business is, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a website that you post blogs and helpful content, helping people decide what they want to do when they come on vacation or go on hikes in Alaska, British Columbia, and Washington. Is that a fair summary?
Yep, it sure is.
Cool.
So it's definitely pretty outdoors focused.
Yeah.
Like my Washington content, I don't really have anything. Like, I haven't done any hotel reviews, or I don't do a lot of like city stuff, even though I live in the city. I do more like kind of my most popular articles on the Washington side are like right now it's winter hikes near Seattle, fall hikes, spring hikes. So like seasonal hikes that are close by, or hikes in a certain area, like Olympic National Park, for example, is like more what I write about. I do have articles about Seattle, but not a ton.
Yeah.
I write more about other stuff. And then in Alaska, it is definitely mostly geared towards visitors. Like, most of the traffic I have on my website to those articles is not from Alaska, whereas a lot of the traffic that I have to my articles about Washington is from people who live here. So there's kind of a couple different audiences. Although I know people find me who are visiting Seattle or coming to go to national parks. I know that also happens. That's not the majority of the traffic for here. So it's basically, I started it because I found like when there were things I knew really well, often the information on the internet wasn't either accurate or helpful, or just wasn't there. Like if you try to find out whether or not there's a cell phone signal on a trail, for example, nobody includes that in their stuff except me, at least that I've found. Right. And that's kind of important. Like, am I going to be able to text my spouse or not?
Yeah, no, it's super helpful.
Do I need to have my emergency GPS or not? So anyway.
No, it's very cool. I've, I think only twice, but been looking up a hike that I want to do, and I've clicked on an article and I'm like, oh, this is Jennie. Like, so yeah, it's getting, it's up there in the Google search, which is awesome.
It is. Yeah. Yes. Which is in order to earn a living doing it, a requirement. You have to learn how to do that, which is a big learning curve. I'm a school counselor, so that's not anything I've ever learned in school, but, I'm not a school counselor anymore.
Yeah.
I'm trained to be one. I've worked in high schools for a long time.
The last one I found that you wrote, and I just accidentally stumbled upon it, was I went to, oh man, now I'm going to forget. Well, I'll spoil the story and then you'll remember.
Is it about Mount Si?
Mount Si, yes. I went to Mount Si, and on the way, and we're driving back, and it was my first time, and the guy was saying that it was, I want to say he was saying 7 miles. I was like, no, it's definitely 8. And so I'm Googling it to see what other people are saying. And
it's definitely 8.
And the whole time we're talking about how disgusting that bathroom was at the trailhead. Like
it's the worst
we were just like, nope,
Washington.
We're good. And I think
it's horrible.
I think it was somewhere in your title. Oh, or no, maybe it was just like Mount Si is overrated. I can't remember.
It's called Don't Hike Mount Si.
Don't hike. Okay. And you talk about how it is possibly the most disgusting bathroom in Washington. And we were both like,
it is. It's the worst one I've seen.
Seriously, you're probably like 15 yards away just walking on the trail, and you can smell it. It's brutal.
It's really, really super hardcore.
It's really bad.
It's terrible.
Love it.
We did not get closer than 15 yards.
And I think when it comes to Alaska too, there's a lot of nonsense on the internet about Alaska, unfortunately, especially about some of the topics that we'll probably talk about. And so I think I kind of started because there were all these things like, why do people love Mount Si so much? There's so many other hikes. You know, why is there so much nonsense about the Alaska ferry or whatever out there? So that is kind of what inspired me to start it, I think.
That's super cool.
Wanting to put something
good. I'm curious if you found that there just wasn't a lot on Alaska at all. Like some of the things, other than the obvious, kind of low-hanging fruit. If, obviously Washington, that there's a lot of people do hikes, a lot of people, talk about them, things like that. Yeah. I wonder if in Alaska you were like, you just kind of found a need because there wasn't really anything to begin with.
There is a lot out there, but it is kind of hard to sift through.
Sure.
I think a lot of searches that you do on Google related to Alaska have a lot of ads, which is, it's not that there's a problem with ads, but it can be a little bit difficult to be like, sometimes they're not totally on point for what it's called user intent in the blogging world of like when the person Googles, what's the cheapest way to go to Alaska, for example, which is a way a lot of people find me. Some of the answers are not really on point for that, right?
So, are you saying they're not honest? Like someone will say this is because they're being sponsored by that company, or is that not what you're saying?
No, I mean, I'm sure that does happen, but that wasn't what I meant. More like, I'll try to think of a better example. Like let's say someone is looking for a flight scene tour of Denali, for example. They might get some of the ads. There's a lot of ads for that sort of search query, but some of them aren't necessarily about flight scene in Denali. They might be flight scene in other places. So the question around the intent is like, did that person, when they were searching, did they want flight scene in Alaska, or were they looking specifically for Denali? They might get frustrated because they have to weed through a lot of things to find that answer. So there are things out there, I assume, for every topic that are inaccurate, but I think the bigger issue is sometimes there's not like a good enough answer about certain things. And I think part of it is because not everyone is an expert in that place, right? So they might be an expert in traveling in general, but they might not know, that just because summer is the most popular time to go to Alaska, it's not the only time it's not always the best time to go. So for example, if someone really wants to see the Northern Lights or the Aurora, like you have to go in the winter for that. Or at least the fall. Right. So things like that, right, that are a little bit harder. But there are other really good websites about Alaska. There are other people who do a good job, but it can be kind of hard to find. A lot of people who end up having me plan their trip for them have just gotten overwhelmed by trying to kind of weed through all the information that's there, and like, oh, I just realized this is a really big state and maybe I won't be able to see it all in 10 days. And then I'm like, well, I haven't seen it all in a lifetime and won't in the rest of my life. So, you won't see it all. It's okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it sounds like you still have a niche there. I'm trying to articulate what I'm thinking. Your niche is more direct to consumer and, showing your experience and I mean, in the whole fact that you can plan trips for people is I'm sure you have like conversations with them, like what's most important for you.
Yeah.
Which is, a good place to start, and you can't necessarily find those answers just by Googling it.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing that I'm really good at when it comes to helping people plan, is helping them figure out what they do care about. Right. So like you're not going to see it all off the table. Like, but what is most important? You really want to see wildlife, or do you really want to just relax, or do you really want to go hiking or fishing or whatever? And sometimes people need some help getting clear about that. Which is where it's helpful to have been a counselor.
So what are some of your favorite ones to plan, right? So if someone, case in point, someone comes in and says, I really want to see whales, or I really want to see some of the coolest views. What, like the ones that you get really excited, like obviously you got to plan them and some of them are fun and you probably like all of it, but what are some that you're like, this is what I like to do? These ones right here.
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I mean, for sure, Northern Lights is definitely my favorite, because I know about that for sure. I know a lot about that, and it's hard for people. It's one of those things. I think I mentioned a couple times that I was a school counselor. So the other thing I know a lot about is college admissions, which is not what we're talking about today. But it's another thing that people have a lot of feelings about, but often are a little short on like good information that's not emotional about that. And I think it's the same thing about the Northern Lights, because like what I always tell people is what's most important is to go when it's dark and look up a lot. Really, if you do that, you're good, right? You don't have to overcomplicate it. You can overcomplicate it, but you don't have to. So I really love that, because you can get really specific, and that's just really fun to plan. I think I also enjoy things that are kind of a challenge. So if someone is like, well, there's 5 of us and one of us likes to hike and one of us likes to fish and one of us likes to sleep in and one of us is a night, like if it's kind of a tough challenge, then that also is kind of fun for me.
That's really cool.
Because I'm a little weird that way. Because then it becomes like a puzzle. You're like, can you meet everybody's needs in some way and make this work in their budget? And
I have the ultimate challenge for you.
Okay.
Plan a family reunion for my family in Alaska. 6 kids, lots of personality.
Yes. Are you kidding?
Yes.
Okay. I thought so, because I know your crew is not keen on cold
She's
weather.
like, my fee just went triple.
Right.
Triple.
Exactly, right?
Yeah. Keep going.
Yeah.
Keep going. You should meet some of my family first.
I know some of them.
Yeah, it's true. You do.
Yeah.
I think you probably know most of them.
I don't know. You would have to tell me.
I probably would. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them.
Yes.
So I haven't said this. Jennie is my cousin-in-law, so my wife's cousin. So
Yes.
yeah, she's met my family.
Yes.
Those cold family reunions, am I right?
Right. Yes.
Yeah, we normally go somewhere warm.
Yeah.
It's kind of, yeah.
It's a good choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I want to get back to the blogging, maybe specifically here in a little bit, but
Sure.
I was really excited to personally talk to you because Alaska is someplace that I've wanted to go and just haven't yet. It's definitely on the bucket list. So tell us a little bit about you. You lived there for 7 years.
Yes.
Where did you live? Why were you there? And then maybe just elaborate on some of that.
Sure. Yeah. Well, one thing I would say to start with, Drew, is for anybody, I know a lot of people listening to this are in the Pacific Northwest. If you are in the Pacific Northwest and you want to go to Alaska, you got to make it happen. Like, it's so, you know, you could just do a short trip. You could just do a weekend, right? Like, it's really close to us here. So I'll just throw that out there, even though that's not answering the question. So I guess to go way back, my great grandfather lived in Alaska in the late 19th century. He lived in Sitka and Wrangell, and my great grandfather was born there. So those folks died before I was born. But there has been, and then my dad had an uncle who lived in Alaska when I was growing up. So it was something that was kind of always on my radar. When I was in high school, my family took a really great trip there. We found a high school friend of my dad's who had moved off the grid and lived, and my dad asked at the post office like if they'd help us find him, and then we found him.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
That is super cool.
Anyway, so that was kind of, and then we spent some time with his aunt and uncle also. So that was kind of when I was growing up. But then in college, my best friend was from Juneau. And so between her and a couple other folks from Juneau that had come down here for school, I got to know them. So I spent a little time visiting them, like in the summer before school started again. And then after college was when I moved there the first time. I lived there more than one time, so it wasn't a continuous thing. So I moved there and I worked in tourism in Skagway, which is a tourist town. Like, that's the entire economy is cruise ship tourism specifically. So I worked on land, but I was there. So I was there, then I was in Juneau for a little while, then I went back, then I met my husband, and then I went to Juneau again. So it was a seasonal job, so we kind of went back and forth to different places in Alaska. His job was not seasonal, but mine was. And then we got married. We got married here, but then we went to Fairbanks, which is completely opposite part of the state, totally different climate, like everything different. And we lived there for 4 years, and I went to grad school there for school counseling, and my husband finished college. So he had lived there for like 8 years before coming down to Skagway. So he lived in Fairbanks a lot longer than I did. Yeah.
How wild are the long summer days and short winter days? Like, is that as crazy as people talk about?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean,
I can't even wrap my head around it.
It's like a lot of things when you live somewhere, it becomes normal and nothing can feel crazy all the time when you live there, right? Like, that just isn't, because you adjust. And also because everyone around you is like, this is, you're like, you guys, it's minus 50. And they're like, whatever.
Yep,
then you kind of have
know.
to get over it. So I guess I would also say that if you're already from a place, like, we have pretty big swings of daylight in Seattle. So if you live here, you already have an idea of what it's like. You just dial that up to like.
So what's
10.
the difference? Like, here, it'll start to get light at like 7:30, 8 o'clock, and then gets dark at 4:30. So like, what is that difference where you were at?
Well, in Fairbanks, it's pretty extreme. Like in Southeast Alaska, it's darker in the winter and lighter in the summer, a lot more than Seattle, but it's not quite as extreme as Fairbanks, which is way up there.
Like,
so
what time to what time?
In the winter, the latest, so late December, because the solstice, the shortest day is the same time as our shortest day. It's just shorter.
Yeah.
So the sun comes up around 11 and sets 2:30 or so. But I think the thing that's more wild than the short day is that the sun just barely gets up above the horizon. So what it's more like is watching a 6-hour sunset. It's more like that.
Wow.
Yeah. It's pretty wild.
That is wild.
Yeah, and then in the summer, it's the opposite of that. So the sun dips down below the horizon barely from, I should use my other hand because it's the other thing that's weird is that instead of the sun coming up in the east and setting in the west, it really comes up in the winter. It comes up in the south and it sets in the south.
Oh, crazy.
And in the summer, it comes up in the north, goes around the sky, and then sets in the north again. So, I mean, not exactly the same place, right? It's a little bit, but yeah, it's pretty strange. So in the summer, at the end of June, there's the sun set is around 12:30 in the morning, and then it comes up again at 2:30-ish, something like that.
So
but
wild.
it's not ever dark. you'd never need to turn a light on or drive with your headlights or use a headlamp or something like that. I mean, if you're inside, in here, you'd have to turn a light on. But so it doesn't, and it can be really disorienting for people, especially if you're visiting, because it's never dark and you don't know what time it is. There's nothing to tell you what time it is. There's just, it's very strange. And my husband, Jay, is an archaeologist. He's not working as an archaeologist right now, but he was when we lived there. And so he worked in Gates of the Arctic National Park, which is above the Arctic Circle. And the sun doesn't set there at all. And again, we're just talking about midsummer, right?
Right.
And the sun just kind of goes around the sky endlessly. And it's really strange.
I was just going to ask, there's
very
a movie that I really enjoy, and it's called 30 Days of Night.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
Does that, so it's, I won't go into to the movie specifically, but the premise is essentially there's 30 days where there is no sun. The sun does not come up.
Yes.
Does that happen?
Yeah,
in certain places?
it's called polar night. And so what it is when you're far enough, it's a little bit hard to do this in an audio format to really talk about why we even have seasons.
Oh yeah, sure.
But it has to do with the tilt of the Earth, right? And so as we go around our orbit, at times in the summer, we're at a point in our orbit where the northern hemisphere is getting more sun because we're angled towards the sun. And then when we move in our orbit to the other side, we're angled away from it. And that's why Australia is having the opposite season that we are.
Yeah.
Right? Because when we're in this part of the orbit over here, they're in the south, they're in the southern hemisphere, so they're facing towards the sun when we're facing away. So if you're above, and that's what the Arctic Circle is. So if you're above the Arctic Circle, that's the point where on the summer solstice, the sun never goes below the horizon. And on the winter solstice, it never comes above the horizon. But if you're further north than that, then it would be more days, right? So I don't know what it is like at the North Pole, but, on the north, what's called the North Slope of Alaska, which is the Arctic Ocean coast, it's something like 20 or 30, I can't remember exactly how long, but it's sometime in late November till sometime in January. The sun doesn't come up at all. Ooh. And then in the summer, it's the opposite, right? It stays. Yeah. So the other thing about that, and I know we've gone way far down this hours of daylight.
I'm enjoying it.
Okay. Is that because it's got to go back to the other extreme, the change in the daylight is very dramatic. Especially not so much in middle of winter, middle of summer, because it kind of, here kind of from Thanksgiving until end of January, it doesn't really feel like it's changing that much, even though it is. That's kind of the same there. And then all of a sudden it's you're gaining 7 minutes every day. And it's whoa. And then you get to the point where it's light all the time, and then you kind of don't notice again. So in March or September, it's the same amount of hours of daylight that we have everywhere else on the planet. So that's what the equinox is when the whole planet is getting the same number of hours of daylight and dark.
This has been very interesting. I've actually really enjoyed this.
I'm going back to my science center days here with this seasons conversation.
Andrew and I are just asking you questions that we could Google, but we'd rather talk to you about.
Yeah, and it would be interesting. I'm curious now what you would find on Google if you Googled that. Hopefully
that you would hope, but, right? Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I've always been fascinated by that. I think since I was
it's fascinating.
It is. Yeah. So, this is going further down the rabbit trail. I grew up in Southern California. And when I was 9, I moved to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. So, really similar to here. Mm-hmm. I was 9, to be fair. But I had no understanding that this was a thing. And so I was like, is it just me or are these days short? What is happening? And my parents explained it to me and I'm like, what are you talking about? What do you mean the days are shorter here and not there? And it's the same time. I was so confused. So
yeah, I know.
I still get confused by it.
And I think as humans, there's this thing about us that we're it's dark. Some people are night owls or they like to wake up early or whatever. But in general, our bodies kind of want to be asleep when it's dark, right? It's harder to get up in the morning when it's dark in the winter. That's just the way it is. And, that is definitely something you notice there as being whoa, I feel like doing nothing. Or in the summer, people get all crazy and they're I just got off work and it's midnight and I'm going to go fishing and then go back to work. And that, yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine that. I bet summer. Well, no, I know firsthand from being here, I have so much more energy in summer. Yeah. And so much more motivated to set my alarm for 5 a.m. when the sun's coming out and be let's go. But in winter, it's no. It's the middle of the night. What are we doing?
Yeah. Not it's really dark. It's not it's straight up dark. 6:30, you get up and you're could be 10 p.m.
Yeah.
I have no idea. It's dark.
One conversation that Jay, my husband, and I have frequently around this time of year is if there's one of those days where it's just really dark all day in the Pacific Northwest, it's winter, so there's only the sun is only up for 8 hours to start with, and then there's those thick clouds and maybe it's raining and the street lights never go off. You guys know that kind of day. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So we will often have this conversation of is that more depressing or is it more depressing for there only to be a few hours of daylight, but it's sunny, right? So we often, there's not really an answer to that, but
I have an answer, but I'll let you go first, Andrew.
Well, one of my friends, Tila, if you're listening, shout out. She was talking that one of the depressing things about being here is that those days when it's gray and just kind of raining, you have no idea what time it is. It's just constantly gray. Mm-hmm. So I have a tendency to agree with that. You have no idea whether it's 9 or 3. No clue. Yeah. No idea.
So again, we're pretty parallel as far as equator is concerned to Coeur d'Alene. Pretty close.
Yes.
And I realized when I first moved here 9 or so years ago, I was like, man, I've heard about the winter blues. I kind of feel it. Why do I feel it? It's the cloud cover.
It's cloudy.
Yeah, because in Coeur d'Alene, way colder.
Yeah.
Same daylight most of the year. And you'll have a snowstorm or a rainstorm and then it goes away and it's clear skies. And you still see the sun, even though it's cold as heck, you still see the sun. Mm-hmm. So it's the cloud cover. The cloud cover is depressing. And this is not good business for a real estate agent. Be come to Tacoma. It's depressing.
Move to Tacoma, they said. The restaurant months are fantastic, which is lucky because it's dark a lot.
Yeah.
Summers are great.
Yeah, summers are great.
Summers are great.
Have you guys seen the like Pacific Northwest weather, like cartoony weather charts that like don't have months or anything, and they're like, it'll be like the dark wet, the gray wet, the bright wet.
Yeah, I have.
I haven't seen that.
Oppressive sun, spiders, dark wet.
Yeah,
That's what this season. It's really funny.
That's awesome.
Yeah, spider season is real.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But you should move here if you're thinking about it. It's great.
Yeah. This is not a real estate podcast, but if it was, we're doing a really bad job. Okay, so back to your business. Can you talk about how you, I mean, I think we kind of have an idea, but can you talk about how do you monetize a business like that? I mean, obviously you write blogs and you put them online for free. And again, I'm asking this question like I'm completely ignorant. I have a basic understanding, but can you kind of explain a little bit how does someone who gives a free product make money?
That is a great question. And I'm glad you asked because I feel like I explain this to folks a lot, which I'm happy to do because I think people are sometimes afraid to ask me. They'll be like, so you're a blogger? You have a website? How? And I'm like, how do you make money? And they're like, oh yeah, kind of. And I'm like, yeah, it's cool. It's okay.
You're pretty much an influencer.
Well, it depends on how you define it, right? Okay, so if you talk about online businesses in general, what if you're producing free content that's free to consumers, like a podcast or a blog or a YouTube channel, then the way that you get paid is by essentially selling the attention of your audience. So the ways that looks for a website is display ads, which is one of the ways that I make money. And another is affiliate links, which are you have to disclose them. So you would always know that they're there. But if you go to a recipe and maybe it's a chocolate chip cookie recipe and you might see a link in there, it might say like this recipe has affiliate links or this article has affiliate links. And then maybe there's a link to like the perfect cookie sheet on Amazon, for example. And that might be an affiliate link. So that person would get a admittedly very, very tiny amount of money from Amazon if you buy it.
Like a commission.
It's a commission, basically, right. But it's all based on links. And it's, this is maybe more detailed than you want, but it's tracked by cookies. So like when you go to websites and it always says, will you accept the cookies? And you're like, of course I want cookies. And then you're like, wait, what are
It's
cookies?
A recipe website, obviously.
Do I want cookies? What even is that?
I'm here.
So, and I had no idea what it was before I had a website either. So basically what it is how, this sounds very Big Brother, which it's not really. Is a little, but not basically
little brother. Not Big Brother.
It's little brother. Yeah. So basically when you click from that website to say Amazon to buy the cookie sheet or the butter that they recommended or whatever, when you click through there, Amazon will know that you're not just Amazon. I'm just using that as an example because that's a big one. Amazon will know that click came through your website, and then that purchase, if they purchase any, in the case of Amazon, it's actually anything, not just the cookie sheet. So if they bought the cookie sheet and a pair of jeans and diapers, you get a commission on all of that.
Oh, interesting.
But it's only for a short time, right? So it's like they have to go and buy within 24 hours, not
I didn't realize that last part.
And
that you said.
It's different for different, all affiliate links don't work that. They all have some amount of time they work for, and some you get commission on your whole cart, on some it's just the item. It can get kind of complicated to track all the different I find that a little bit overwhelming, actually. It's important to do, but like keeping track of all the links and keeping them all good and figuring out which ones are actually generating an income is kind of a tedious project. But
and do you I'm sorry if I missed it, do you get paid per click or per purchase?
You get a commission based on the purchase.
Gotcha. Okay.
And the item is not upcharged, correct?
There's no charge to the person.
Right. So that's one way I can support you and your business without costing me $1 is by clicking through your links to, if I am going to purchase that tent that you recommend, use your link because everyone wins except for Amazon. But Amazon won too.
They're doing fine.
Because I maybe wouldn't have bought the tent. Right?
Correct. Or maybe
everybody
you would
wins.
have bought it somewhere else or...
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's basically, if you know how commissions work, it's just an online version of commissions. So you can have a website like mine, and if you have enough traffic, you can generate your whole income from ads and display ads and affiliate links. And there are other things too. You can do sponsored content. I haven't done that, but a lot of bloggers do. So that'll be like you go to that chocolate chip cookie recipe and it says this chocolate chip cookie recipe is sponsored by Dirigold Butter. I'm making that up. I don't know. Actually, I don't know if they sponsor recipes, but then in that case, they would pay that person to put that article online, and you get like paid one time to do it.
Right.
And then it's there. And so it doesn't matter whether anyone bought butter or not.
Right.
Right.
It's
so
more,
it's sort of like, it's similar to a display ad, but it's
brand recognition
structured
almost. Yeah.
differently. Yeah. So for me, I really want to have my income as diverse as possible because there's a lot of things that can come along and totally upset your apple cart of income that you don't have control over. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that.
Absolutely.
Interest rates.
House buying. Ad revenue. So I think it's really helpful if you're really like supporting your family with it to think of as many different ways that you can generate revenue as possible. So for me, I also have like small digital products that I have a couple planners, and
cool.
like a Seattle seasonal hikes guide. And it's just a digital download. And then I also have like pre-made itineraries for Alaska. So if it's like, you don't need a full custom itinerary, but you need someone to say, you have 7 days, do this. Then I have that. So I make some income from that. And then also when I plan trips for people. And all of those different revenue streams are all a little unstable, but the idea is that they kind of sort of balance
collectively
out.
You make
hopefully it kind of works out. But it's definitely and a lot of it depends on how much traffic you have. So I have enough to like just barely make it right now, which is great, but
it's great because you're doing what you love. Is that
it is
fair?
And because it's also something you can grow and change, right? So because I know you guys understand this, like because I'm an entrepreneur, if I want to start offering the custom itineraries or stop doing that and do something else instead,
it's your choice.
I can do that, right? So you always kind of have the option of being like, oh, what else could I do in this business? Or maybe this thing isn't working out very well. I want to try this other thing. And you have the option to do that. And also, I've only been getting an income for 1.5 years. So I'm actually doing pretty well for the amount of time that I've had enough traffic to make a living. That I think is the one thing I would want people to know about websites is it takes a really long time. You have to work for free for a long time. So I know you guys can probably all relate to that also.
Oh yeah.
I worked in high schools for many, many, many years, and I was doing both at the same time for like 5 until like 9 months ago. So,
well, that's one reason I really love this episode because this is like, I was about to say true entrepreneurship, not that the other people we've interviewed hasn't been, but this is like you really built something from complete scratch and worked through like years and years and years of making nothing. So what advice would you have for somebody who has an idea, whatever it might be? They want to start a recipe website. They want to start another travel website, something like that. Mm-hmm. What advice would you have for someone starting out? I'm sure you have tons of advice, but starting out, you already said be patient, right? It's going to take a long time. Make sure you keep your day job while you get started. But what other advice do you have for someone just who has an idea, has a dream, they want to do something like what you're doing, but they're overwhelmed. Like, where do they start?
Yeah. Are you talking specifically about a website?
Yeah, I'm
not any business.
No, I'm talking about your type of business.
Yeah.
But not necessarily travel. A recipe website, something
website
to that effect, where they give free content. And then eventually maybe get to something like where they have additional content that you can pay for, but they want to get ad revenue. They want to get, what was it called again? The Amazon links, affiliate links, and so on. Because I'm assuming affiliate links, you don't get that, for example, until you have a tremendous amount of traction on the website. They have to see. Am I correct on that?
Yes. So that's true. You do have a certain amount of traffic to be able to qualify for things, but you also, like with Amazon, you have to make a certain number of sales in a certain period of time. So you also need enough traffic to sort of know that that's going to happen. And you can't just buy stuff yourself because they know it's you. And
right.
Or if it's your mom, they're like, that's your mom. No. Anyway, or that person sent you 3 Christmas presents. No.
That's hilarious.
So I think as far as starting, I feel like I should go back one step and say that the way that I am earning money from my website is not the only way, right? I mean, it's pretty common to have a mix of display ads and affiliate links, as anyone who's ever read an article on the internet already knows, right? Because you see that, you see ads, you see, but people also have membership sites and coaching and sponsored articles, right? So there are other things you can do. What I described as a common story, but it's not the only way. Like, for example, there are people who don't have any ads at all and sell small digital products like planners, spreadsheets, things like that, and make their entire income from that, right? So that's another way. I have a little bit of that, but it's like nowhere near enough to like pay even like one bill yet. Right. But again, that's kind of going back to, it's okay that I'm kind of barely making it right now, because the idea is that some of these things grow over time. You're always writing new content, that if you keep focused, but also looking at different things and bringing those in, that you grow it, is the idea. So it's different than being in a salary job where it's like, if you're making $50,000 a year, that's what you're making, right? Yeah. You can, on the other hand, you can also lose it immediately with like no severance pay or whatever. Anyway, so back to your question about advice. I think I would say, you have to have a plan for how you're going to have money, I would say, at least for 2 years. It took me 5 years to get to the point where I was like generating enough income to even contemplate not having other jobs. You could argue that I'm still not quite there, but I'm kind of doing it anyway. But I could have done it faster knowing what I know now. Like if I started a new site from nothing right now, I could get to this point faster. But I still think it's hard when you're learning to get there. Like you're still going to have to learn. So I think 2 years would be if you could work on it full time and you made really good decisions about what you learned and focused on. But if you were doing another job, or, I mean, you can also always get lucky, and like you could have started a keto diet blog in what year was it that keto was really big? Like 2019 or whatever. I mean, if you just happen to be right on a trend like that at the right moment, or if you had a baking blog in March of 2020, boom, but you can't count on that, because the opposite can also happen. You could have a travel blog in March of 2020, and then, travel bloggers had no income in 2020. I was not making any money yet anyway, so I was fine. Anyway, but a lot of people really, so there's a lot of luck involved, but it's not all luck, I guess. So I think, so my advice would be, make sure you have a plan for how you can not make money from it for a long time. I think that would be the first thing. Another would be, you're going to be deep in whatever this content is. And there's an argument to be made by very smart people that you don't need to have any passion for your content at all. You just need to do the keyword research, know what people are looking for, pump out the content. And while that works technically, for me, it's too hard to do it about something you don't care about.
You know, I can't imagine.
But you have to also not get too precious with it, right? Because you're not going to make a living off of your passion. I mean, whoa, that sounded really wrong. You're just because you care about something doesn't mean other people will care.
Right.
And other people you have to write excellent content. And there's ways you can learn about that. Learning keyword research is really important. Learning how to write good content, which is different from like writing a novel or whatever. Like there's a lot of things about how you structure it so that Google can understand what you're saying and make it easy for people to read. Like it's not a novel, right?
That's
it's not
huge,
my
I feel like, with blog
website
posts.
is not a page turner. Like you don't need to keep scrolling to see what's going to happen next. What's going to happen next is another hike idea for January.
Right.
Right. So it has to be really digestible, and that is really important. So I think learning the keyword research, which is what are people looking for? Do people even care about that topic, and what do they want to know about it? And then learning how to structure your writing, I think, are the big technical things. But I would add, you're going to be really in it for a long time without making money. So I think you have to, you have to be passionate about it, but that's debatable. And not everyone would agree with me about that. And they would also be right, if that makes sense.
Sure.
I completely agree. I mean,
I do too.
There are outliers, but I would say they are outliers. I mean, there are very few people who I've met who are good at real estate and, you know, didn't have like a propensity to real estate. Like they didn't like love real estate or at least maybe they love sales. You know, they love some aspect of it. And that's like, I can think of one agent I met who's really killing it. And he's like, yeah, dude, I don't understand like why people love real estate, but I can make a lot of money. And I was like, all right, bro, to each their own. But I think that would be an outlier. Yeah. And I think the benefit for someone in that situation is you don't get too precious about what you're doing. You're not like, oh, but this house, someone really should pay $10 million for this house. And someone's maybe only going to pay $1 million for the house. Like, it doesn't matter how much you love it, right? So I think that's part of it too, is you have to care about it, but you also have to be like, listen, like, ultimately, this is what people need to know about winter hiking. You know, and they just need to know that. And if I'm like, well, I don't like to wear rain pants, they're really uncomfortable, but it's still good advice in general to tell people to wear rain pants. Yeah. Well, I
just carry them in my pack and then put them on if I'm desperate. But
I have noticed that about your blog posts specifically, is they're very, they are well thought out, and you can tell that you've done the hike in the month that you're saying. And so it is really helpful. There's much better words, but I'm having trouble thinking of them. Yeah. But I mean, even like the boots on the ground, like don't go to this porta potty. It showed that you'd been there.
Wait for a bush. Just go behind your car door. Like you just don't go in there.
True. Yeah. And you know, when you read that article that blog post, you know that the author had been there, and it wasn't someone who just read a bunch of other ones and then decided to copy it and put it in their own words. It was like, no, this person has actually done this hike. And I think people appreciate authenticity.
I think that's true. That has worked for me. So I think, thank you.
Yeah,
and I think that's true. I think another advantage that I have is being a middle-aged person, an educator, a guide. I've done a lot of work as a tour guide, and that really helps you understand what people need more even than your own experience does. So like, for example, I've learned from being a guide that people can get quite panicky about where the restrooms are and how they're going to be able to use the restroom. Not everybody is like me, who's going to be fine jumping over a guardrail and just like moving on, right? So in particular, I have found that I feel like you guys are going to like this, even though it's kind of a tangent. People do not like toilets that don't flush.
Oh, I absolutely do not. Yeah.
And I get the like not being able to wash your hands. That sucks. But I don't quite understand. Like once it goes down the hole, like who cares? Right?
Okay, I care.
Like, why is it important that there makes a flushing noise and water goes down?
Well, because it's still there. It's just on top.
It's
so. See,
it's
Mackenzie's like
you.
My wife,
she is.
your cousin. She's just like you. She's like, why does it matter? And I'm like, because it's just still right there. Just like a few feet below you. It's not my thing. I'm not going to win this argument.
So I know
it's
like,
not
you
an
lived
argument.
in Idaho for a while, but you clearly didn't do much camping.
I did. Right. It was the hardest part for me, backpacking. I did a lot of backpacking. Well, not a ton, but like 2 or 3 a year, and it was so hard.
Okay, so quick, would you rather? I know you're supposed to ask the questions, but
no, that's okay.
Oh no,
true, Isaac. Would you rather have no restroom at all, like bushes? Or extremely gross outhouse.
Extremely gross.
Bushes, trees, logs.
I'm with you, Drew.
Extremely gross outhouse.
100%.
I can even a slightly gross outhouse. I'm like, I don't need this.
Yeah, go outside. So,
but you're different, and that's cool.
A long time.
Max.
Can we ask Max? Is that allowed?
Yeah, let's ask Max. Max, you can say your answer.
Our producer.
Bushes.
Yeah.
All right.
Boom.
So I am outvoted.
Isaac.
Yeah.
But it's okay. But the point of that is that would not have registered to me as something I needed to talk about, except for having been a guide and spent day after day like driving around Mount Rainier with people being like, I can't use that bathroom. It doesn't flush. And I'm like, but it has a seat and water to wash your hands. Why does it matter what happens under the hole? And they're like, it's not cool. So anyway.
It's a great tangent.
Yeah.
I'm correct.
That's fine. You can. What I am saying is that most people, in my experience with like the general public, are more like you, Isaac, and they're like, no. So,
I literally. Okay, this is so not appropriate, but I don't care. We're already down this rabbit trail.
Right. We're down here talking about outhouses.
Can't figure it out if I don't have something to sit on. And I know people in Europe are like, this is how we do it. I can't. I don't. It's a disconnect. I'm like. Lean against a tree. Like I don't understand how to do it.
Is it because you're from Southern California?
It's so hard for me. And I've done 5-day backpacking trips. I've done 5-day backpacking trips where, trust me, I did it. It just took me a very long time to muster the courage.
Yeah. Well, I admire you for not allowing that to be a barrier to an experience that you wanted to have.
Thank you. Yeah, I love hiking so much, and I love backpacking where you're just out and you're out in nowhere, and like you couldn't even get help if you needed it, or for a while at least, right? It's pretty cool. But
there's nothing like the feeling of not being able to get help.
Honestly, that's the only way I can articulate it. Like
I get it.
It's a wild experience.
Have you ever? Okay, last thing about that.
No, you're good.
Outhouses. Yeah. Have you ever used one of the like backcountry toilets that are like an outhouse without walls?
Oh yeah, Shy Beach
has those. Oh yeah, they do have those.
Yeah.
How do you feel about those? Probably not great.
Not great.
Okay.
That would make your first question a little harder, because then it's like, well, maybe I would rather go somewhere in the woods where I could have a little privacy, because the one at Shy Beach is maybe 15 yards from the trail bottom off
shady.
of the beach, and it's barely shady. Like it's kind of out in the open.
Sketchy.
No, I knew what you meant, but it's like
it's not shady.
It's
enough,
right there,
some might say.
And I'm like, so yeah, no, I definitely, So that I would answer out in the woods on that one.
Yeah, that's fair.
So it wasn't on a trailhead. It was on an Airbnb that was like 100 acres, and it was one spot. And there was no bathroom inside of the dry cabin. It was outside, maybe 20 yards away. And it was kind of perched up on this hill, and you could see this beautiful valley. And the best bowel movement I ever had in my life was after having a cup of coffee, and then at about 8 a.m. going and hanging out on top of that hill. Man, it was gorgeous. I loved it. There was nothing like it. Highly recommended.
Mackenzie talks romantically That is seriously the only word I can talk about. I can think of romantically about. Oh, we might have to cut this. I think she can talk about this, but I'll have to ask her. Anyways, cut. If not, she worked for Fish and Wildlife on McNeil Island, which is a private island because it's a facility for I don't know, people who were arrested. I don't know. Anyways,
it's a prison.
It's a prison.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was really a struggle for me to get that out. Anyways, she talks about mornings because they camped out there morning BM, and they would hear all the wild animals and no cars and no people, and I'm just like, what is wrong with you? Like it doesn't resonate with me at all.
There's no walls, completely open. It just feels very natural. Yeah. So
I think that's okay. I don't know.
Is it cool if I try to bring that outhouse conversation?
Let's go.
Like back to entrepreneurship,
Please
because
do.
I feel like I can do it. Is it cool if I try?
Yep.
Okay.
I think you need a pun though. Shit happens.
Nope. No puns. I've been a tour guide for like a decade, pun free. I want to just own that. Okay.
I bet you accidentally made some puns.
Never.
Doubt it.
Yeah.
So for context,
not
for
once.
anyone listening, Isaac loves puns. That's his thing.
Especially animal puns, but that's irrelevant.
Bro, really?
So bad.
Okay, so we were going to try and bring this thing back around.
Yes, right.
We're going to try and turn this bus, get it
here.
right back
Still
on the
part of
correct
it.
road.
Yes, still participating in this conversation. Okay, so one of the things that I don't know if you've heard about this, but it's a huge deal in the online world right now is AI, or AI generated content.
Haven't heard about it.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. I was joking.
I'm like, really?
Definitely heard about it.
Cool.
Yes.
Definitely,
Okay,
absolutely.
so probably there's no one listening to this that hasn't heard about AI generated content. And that I think is a whole nother conversation probably. But one of the things that's kind of interesting is, of course, AI can do a lot of things, but AI is not going to know about the outhouse thing. And one of the things that Google is really working on right now is how to make sure that like the content that people are getting when they do a Google search is actually a good answer and actually like telling you something legitimate. And so things like that, like what you were talking about before, Isaac, things that sort of signal that the author has been there, even if they've used AI in their writing in some way, is going to become, I think, more and more, not just me, I think a lot of people feel like that's going to become more important over time, is like, how do you, not so much how do you get rid of the robots, but like, how do you make sure that a human is still on some level determining
that authentic human element.
Human can use this information.
Absolutely.
Right. Which I personally think is fascinating. And there are people who are like, AI is the end of the world and AI is going to destroy all content creation. And I think that's just ridiculous. I mean, I do think it will change things, but there's always things changing in the online business world. So I think this is just another thing to kind of adapt to and be like, how do I use this? And do I use this? And that kind of thing. But what we were just talking about is, I think, part of what keeps it relevant for people.
Well, people pay for the human element. Like people can sense that and they want that. They crave that. And so somehow you're able to, when I read that article, well, no, that's a bad example because I saw your name, so I knew it was. But no, you can see when you read articles, you can feel when it has more heart into it, and I feel like that would translate with AI generated blog posts. You would be able to tell when, or for the most part, you would at least sense a lack of care, I would say, right?
Yeah, and I think that's not to say that like AI can't be great to sort of help you, but it's not going to take the place. It's just not going to be as easy as like pushing a button and generating 2,000 words and publishing it. Like you're not going to you might get a little ways with it for a little while, but like ultimately that's not I don't think that's what's going to happen.
I agree. What's the next step for your business? You don't need to have some clear, concise answer, but like, what's the next thing you're looking forward to, maybe launching, or anything new you're considering adding?
Can I ask a question to kind of preface that?
Oh yeah, of course.
Quick? So, obviously, betting on yourself and taking the step from, a dream to a business and really kind of stepping into the entrepreneurship of what you're doing currently. It takes some bravery, and it's difficult to do. A lot of people maybe just don't ever have the opportunity, or don't want to take the risk of going out on their own. Mm-hmm. What do you think kind of gave you that bravery and that initial, I'm going to do this? What do you think that kind of catalyst was to starting your business?
That is a great question. I'd love to say some kind of nonsense that wouldn't be true, but I won't. But I was like, ooh, how could I answer that? That would
sound AI
really
generated thoughts.
Great. Yeah, I knew. Where's a bot when I need one? I think some of it is just my personality. Like I don't know. I think some of it is that, and I think that's a gift. I think it's if you're someone who is kind of has a different personality type, and especially someone who needs a lot of control over things. I think it's not that you can't do it. There's plenty of people who do, but it'd be a lot harder. So that's one thing. I think the other thing is that my career has been chaos. So it's not like I was giving up a cushy tech job. I worked in nonprofits and I worked in schools, and all my jobs have been either seasonal or grant funded and ending at a certain time, or were with an organization that was maybe going to go under. And, so I think some of it is, I don't want to minimize the risk, because it is a risk. And I feel like it's important to tell people there's no guarantee that it will work. Even if you learn a lot, there's still no guarantee. It's working right now. There's no guarantee that will continue. And I would argue that's true of any job, but you're not aware of it in the same way if you're getting, a steady paycheck from somewhere else. So that's hard, because those things aren't really advice I would give to someone else. Those are just kind of my circumstances. But I think you do have to prepare for learning to, I don't really like the word balance, because I feel like what balance really is you're sort of on a knife edge and you're almost falling and then you almost fall the other way. Like, it's not exactly balance, but I think there's a balance between, you have to structure it for yourself so that you can be like keyword research, for example. Okay, if I write these 50 articles in the next 4 months, I have a really good chance of most of them ranking within a year. That'll increase my traffic. That should work. But, and a lot of times it does, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes there's an article that like all the data says that should be killing it, and it just never does anything. And then there's other times where you're like, whoa, I followed the process and it worked like a toaster. I pushed the button and the toast came out. It's very, you do have to tolerate a lot of uncertainty, and you have to tolerate a lot of change. And I think some of that is personality. I think it's easier to do if you have a spouse with a really high-paying job that can support you. That's not my situation, but I think if you did, it would be like, ooh, that would be awesome. But I guess what I would want people to know is that you can do it even if you don't have a sugar daddy.
So I was just going to say, so your advice is, if you have a passion and want to turn it into a business, get married to someone with money.
That is my advice, but that is not actually good advice. And that's not what I've done.
You heard it here first.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And no, you could marry that person with money and that could change.
Oh, fair enough.
So, you also have to think about that. Yeah, I think what I would say is you have to have the passion, but you also have to really figure out what it's going to take to make it work financially.
Be realistic about the process.
Yeah.
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 I love that.
I don't know if
really
does that
to,
answer it?
Yeah, I'd say it's really similar to real estate.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, very, very rarely does somebody get into real estate and in their first 12 months have 12 transactions. Mm-hmm. Like maybe twice has someone at our office done that in the past 5 years. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you have to, in order to make a living, you have to hustle and be at the bottom for a little bit.
Yeah. And I think one thing that is tricky about websites is you do have to hustle, but you also have to be careful that you don't over hustle and not focus on the thing that will actually make money. So that is
that's hard
tricky.
too. Because if you start pushing out bad content just to get more and more and more, it could belittle the whole thing.
Yes. And if you focus a lot of time on like social media, and you can make a lot of money in social media, but it's kind of a different thing than I only do Instagram. That's the only social media I do for my blog. And part of the reason I do that is because I'm like, okay, that's not my revenue generation model. And therefore I should probably just have one thing that I can actually keep up with. But a lot of people have social media managers or on all the platforms, and that's awesome. But if you're by yourself, you kind of have to prioritize. You can't do all the things on all the social medias and write a lot of good content for your blog.
So are you a big time blocker? Because that is a universal thing with anybody, any entrepreneur. I feel like you have all these different things you can be doing that could potentially be earning you income. How do you decide what you're going to do? Because a lot of things you have to do. Some things you're like, well, I really want to do that because I want to add this to my business. So how do you prioritize your day, your week, your month, your year when you have all these different avenues that you could be, you need blog content, but you also should be posting on Instagram. So how do you keep it straight? Do you time block, or what's worked for you?
That is a good question. And that is really tough. Yeah. That is another thing, going back to Drew's question, is I think you do have to be able to make quick decisions without agonizing over them. Maybe when you should agonize over them. And time is one of those things. So for me, I would say that it's evolved over the time I've been doing this. I don't strictly time block because unfortunately, like a super strict structured thing doesn't work great for me. I'd love to say that it does. I'm like, I get up every morning at 7:15 and I do yoga until 7:35. No. But I do prioritize. So the main thing that I use is what I call the MIT, the most important thing. So before knocking off for the day, I always try to be like, tomorrow, what is the one thing that is the most important? That helps me a lot. And I would say I hit that 70% of the time. So like, I'm not great at it, but I'm good enough at it.
No, same.
Right?
I one of my favorite business books is The One Thing. Same.
Oh,
I'm sure same.
I've never heard of that.
Oh, it's a great book. Really good book.
Sounds
it's
like one
probably
I should read.
Right there. But yeah, no, I always write down, I cheat. I write down 3 things. But I almost every day.
You're never a cheaper.
No, it's because my brain is spinning. And so yeah, I write down like the 3 things I have to accomplish the next day in order for the day to be a success. And yeah, it's helped me because then I always end my day thinking, I have more stuff I have to do. Yeah. But at least I got those 3 things done. And so I think that's huge.
And I think when you're working as an entrepreneur, there are always the majority of the great ideas and things that would make money you're not going to be able to do. Most of them you can't, right? It's like you could start a pizza business and a podcast and a flipping something kind of business and
I feel attacked
and a YouTube channel and a website and all the social medias, and you could do consulting and but most of those things you can't really do, right? But you can do a lot of them, right? It's just like you have to prune and be like, what am I trying to do right now? What's most important right now? And another thing that really helps me is I have a list of sort of all the ideas, so I don't have to worry about them. And when I'm ready for a new idea, I go harvest one from over there. Mm-hmm. And then if I get one, I can park it there, so I like know it's being attended to.
So we're so similar. I do the exact same thing.
Yeah. And then I have like, okay. And I also keep like a little task list, like things that won't take more than like 15 minutes. So if it's like, oh, today is not a good writing day because my brain is, I'm going to be like, this is a great day to call the IRS.
It's never a good day to call the IRS.
But, if the day is already shot, that's something that I have been putting off for 2 weeks. It's not a big deal. It just has to do with my business name, and there's like a typo in it. And anyway, so it's fine, but it's like not the kind of thing that you ever want to do. So it helps me to sort of have this like when I'm running out of energy or when I'm going to an appointment in 20 minutes.
Or you don't have creative energy to write a blog post. And so let's just do something. Let's check something off the list. It's kind of low hanging fruit.
And then sometimes I'll just be like, today is not happening.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Or like today, so-and-so, my mom wanted to do this. Awesome. Like, let's do that. Or I feel like doing this with her or with Jay or I don't know, whatever. It's kind of like, what's the point of doing this if I can't do that?
And that's the beauty of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's part of the allure, right? Is that someone's not telling you got to be here by 8:00 and you're clocking out at 5 every single day.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that I'm really trying right now is I'm really trying to, in the morning, decide when I'm going to stop for the day and try to stick to that.
Oh, that's tough.
It is tough.
I'm very bad at that.
And I'm like, I don't necessarily think that that's always what you should be doing necessarily, but I got a little bit out of whack when I think I mentioned I was doing all of these digital, like small digital products, which I'm really glad that I did that, but it was a lot of design work, which I'm not very good at and takes me forever and I get frustrated by. So I was just getting sucked into these like marathon days where I was like...
Marathon days of learning Canva?
Yeah, on Canva. And I'm like, ugh. And so I now need like at the moment, I need kind of a hard reset. And so I'm putting a few extra like guardrails on the day than I normally would.
That's good to do because like you both said, those lists never end.
Right.
Once you start to knock a couple off, 3 more pop in there. It's your Hydra list. You knock one off and 2 more back on. So I think it's really, really good to have kind of those guardrails for yourself to make sure, you're actually getting in that family time and you're getting in some stuff for you. I think that's really important. It's really good.
Yeah. There's also, Jay and I have this like idea or thing that we say sometimes, which is there's no adult coming. Which is like, there's no, this is it. Like, this is what we have to work with.
How are they leaving me alone in this world?
Like, look at the dog and we'll be like, can you help with can you make dinner sometime? I mean, come on. Anyway, so there's kind of this like, and then if that's sort of your personality anyway, and then you're also an entrepreneur, there's also no adult coming to like fix your business. Like, there's no adult coming to like pay your bills and see if one of the things is I get little payments from all these places like all the time. And, you have to, if it's a digital product and somebody bought it in Washington, you got to pay sales tax on that. And well, they pay it, but you pay it, so you have to kind of keep track of all these. And there's no, and I have an accountant, which I would say if you're anyone considering being an entrepreneur, you have to have an accountant. Yep. But I still have to tell her, and she's amazing, by the way, but I still have to tell her what stuff, she's not a magician, so she can't be like, you had 8 bajillion little $12 transactions through Stripe. What is this? And then they're, different. And then there's like, you get money from Amazon, and it has nothing to do with, it's like net plus 60. So it's like you get paid. I just got paid for October, so it's like all over the place. But if someone pays you to do an itinerary, then they pay you today and you get the money today and you do the thing today. And, so it's just
lots of plates to be balancing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Lots of moving parts with your business. I mean, it sounds pretty complicated, honestly. I'm sure the more you do it, it becomes more, it all starts to make sense. But
sometimes it makes sense.
Yeah, sometimes, right.
Sometimes it's just chaos.
Yeah, I feel like I would get the shiny object syndrome if I was in your business. I would really struggle focusing on what is my best, the one thing I can do today. Yeah. That would be really hard for me. I mean, I would say it's easier in real estate. Hard. I mean, we still have a lot of things like, should I make a video or, just call clients or whatever.
Should I call counselors today? Should I call expireds today?
Exactly.
Should I call FSBOs today? Should I make videos?
You have like so much you can do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, wow. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I think the other benefit that I have now is I can also rely on what has worked for me, right? Not just what should work for me or what seems like a good idea or the research that I've done. Now I can say things like what I call meta Alaska content, which is like how to plan a trip, what's the best cruise port, what to pack, articles like that, and seasonal posts about Washington. That's got me to where I am, basically.
So I'd call that your highest and best use, right? Like that's what I call it in real estate. It's like where is most of your business coming from? Focus on that.
Yes. And I think once you get some data of your own, it's easier to lean on it because you're like, okay, this is how I got here. So if I'm not sure what to do next, for sure I should not stop writing really good articles.
Right.
Right. That I should definitely keep doing. But that's also something that I've got worked into my workflow. I know about how long that's going to take. That is something that isn't as, it's hard in that it's work. You have to do it, but it's not super mentally taxing because I kind of have a system for how I do that. I know I need to do it in the morning. For if I start doing that at like 3, forget it.
Right.
I know that I know how to do an outline. And once I have the outline, I feel like I'm done because then it's like filling in a worksheet after that. It's not, but in my mind.
It's easier. Yeah.
Yeah.
So where do you see your business going next year? And then, or what's one big goal you have for this year? And then maybe if you want to tangent off of that, where do you see your business in the next 5 years, give or take? Like what's your goal for this business? And you can also say you don't know.
No idea what's going to happen in 5 years.
But do you have a goal? Do you have a vision for where you want it to be?
On a higher level, I really love this job. I really love the work. So I want to stabilize my income enough so that I can feel confident I can keep doing it. I think that's the big goal. And not have it be like quite so close to the bone as it is now. So I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, there are some specific things I would like to do to make that happen, but some of it I know I'm going to have to just kind of wait and see what happens and then follow that to the next thing, if that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah.
Do you think you're going to start a podcast?
Oh, yes.
Oh, I wasn't like pointing the question at that, but then just popped in my head. No, I really wasn't. We had talked about how Jennie was thinking about starting a podcast. So
yeah, I would love to start a podcast about Alaska travel. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is there's a lot of podcast episodes about Alaska on travel podcasts, but I haven't found much that's specifically focused on Alaska that's for visitors. Like there's a lot of things, just like there are for anywhere if you live there. Mm-hmm. But I think that would be cool just to have a different format. And also I am an extrovert and my job is to be by myself on the internet. So, that's fine, but it's not great. So, I am going to do a little bit of guiding for a tour company this summer. I've done a little bit of work for other people. That's a little more people-y, but I feel like a podcast and having guests and these kind of conversations would probably be a good move.
I would definitely listen. I steered the conversation back to like the business side. but I could have talked about Alaska the whole time. Yeah, I would definitely listen. That would be super
So what kind of stuff would you want to hear about on that podcast?
Well, like you said, Alaska is a big place. You can't see it all, even if you try. I mean, I feel like you have endless content there. And yeah, I feel like everyone's a little interested in Alaska. It's part of the United States, but it's like it's the biggest state, even though most people think it's Texas, which is my favorite little fun fact to catch someone in. But it's the biggest state.
Texas is kind of a little itty bitty state.
In comparison, yeah. It's the biggest state. It's like detached, kind of, right? You have to go through Canada to get there. I don't know. It's kind of, I don't know. I feel like Alaska is just something that everyone kind of has a fascination in.
Yeah.
And it's fun to talk about. And it's easy to get people to talk about it.
Yeah. It feels almost like a different country when you talk about it, but it's like, well, yeah, but it's Alaska. It's part of the United States. But yeah, I don't know. I'd be really fascinated to listen to a podcast just talking about Alaska and talking about where to go and cool things to do. So, yeah.
Fun.
Well, this has been great. You want to wrap up with some of our final questions?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
You got to remind me what they are, though.
Yes, I will. Okay, so these are the final questions we ask all our guests because they're fun. So if you had $20,000 and 6 months to build a business unrelated to what you're doing, and so I'm going to say in your case, like unrelated to building a website. So something different. What would you do?
I think I would probably flip something. Probably old Suburbans into campers.
Whoa.
Really?
Yeah.
Into campers.
Yeah. $20,000 might not be enough to do that. So I might instead just build the box that would go in it.
Right.
And then not actually flip it, but just sell the bed with the drawers.
That's
like
a cool
we built
one.
for our truck. It's a little, the drawers are a little tricky, but I think having done it once, that'd be fun.
That's a really cool one. Mm-hmm. Except now I think about it, a few of our guests have said things that revolve around moving businesses. Someone had an idea of a coffee van,
Coffee truck.
coffee truck,
Like a food truck.
It's like
but
van
with
is
coffee?
wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's fun.
All right, Andrew.
So, sorry guys, I was dying over here.
Don't die.
Just trying really hard not to cough.
I was like, is he all right over there?
I know, you looked at me and were like,
wave your
good?
arms if you like.
I was trying to get Max to like cut the mic because I'm dying over here. So second question. So, as far as books go, there's kind of the top 50 everyone's read. Is there one that has really kind of stood out to you, maybe a little obscure, that you think people should read, that you got a lot out of?
Not a business book. Is that okay?
Perfect.
Totally fine.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yep.
I would recommend anything by Kate Bowler. I don't know if any of you have heard of Kate Bowler.
Sorry, I haven't.
It's fine. She's awesome. She, well, I won't get into her whole story, but she has several great books. She has one that's kind of like small snippets. It's like a little bit that you could like read each day, called Good Enough. And she's just very funny and kind of doesn't take herself too seriously. And I think I a couple times have talked about not letting your business get too precious. And I think that's kind of, it's not a business book and it's a great book for life, but I think thinking about business that way also has really helped me. But it's also just helped me with life because her books are amazing.
Love it.
That's awesome. You have a 1 week all paid for vacation anywhere in the world. You and your husband, where would you go?
Probably somewhere in North Africa.
Cool.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe like, I don't know how long of an answer you want. Or maybe like Turkey or Jordan or sort of somewhere like that.
Is there a specific reason besides Jay being an archaeologist?
No, he doesn't particularly want to go there. When you said with your husband, I was like, oh, that might change my answer. But I just stuck with the original. No, I just think it's, I really like to go to places that are different. Like, to me, that's part of the benefit of traveling is just like experiencing something different. And that's pretty different. Like,
yeah, it is. No, I mean,
different climate, different culture, different religion, different language, different everything. I just think it'd be cool.
I have a buddy who just got back from Turkey, and he loved it. He thought it was incredible. He's been a lot of places, well traveled, and he highly suggested Turkey.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Final question. So, what is your favorite conspiracy theory? So it doesn't have to be something you believe in. It doesn't have to be something, just something that you think is funny. And
yeah. So instead of like one answer, this is kind of a family of conspiracy theories.
I love
but
it.
I really am entertained by all the conspiracies about Bill Gates, of which there are, especially in the education world, quite a few.
There are a ton.
A bunch.
I just kind of love that whole genre of them.
That
Although
is a
I do
great
think
one.
they're
That is a good
somewhat,
one.
they're, you know, a little toxic and dangerous, but maybe not the worst that's out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think we taught like the lizard people thing. I mean, he's been thrown around to be a lizard person. Like, there's been crazy.
Oh, I don't even know that one.
Okay, so in our teaser,
I
in our
think of
te-
like 6, but I don't know that one.
in our teaser episode, we asked each other what our favorite conspiracy theory was, and my answer was like, there's this theory about aliens are possessing some of like the biggest, most influential people in the world. And there's like videos, like interviews of Bill Gates like doing something, and the camera kind of cuts, and it looks like almost like he's an alien, but it's obviously a camera malfunction. Anyways, that's a great one. I wouldn't have thought of it, but it's great because Bill Gates is one of those people that when someone says something about Bill Gates, it's like there's a huge array of what they could think.
Yeah.
Like you have no idea. So, yeah.
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 And he's kind of a big local figure.
Yeah, he is. Isn't he the biggest property owner in Washington? Did I just totally make that up? I thought that was true.
No, I think you're correct. Yeah.
I think that's true. Yeah. Yeah. Well, cool. This has been a blast. Where can plug yourself? Where can people find out more about you? Instagram, your website, and how can people support your business if they'd like to?
Yeah. Well, thank you. This has been awesome, and thanks for asking about that. So my website is www.ordinary-adventures.com. So that's a good place to go to get info about hikes in Washington, different parts of Washington, Alaska travel, BC travel, all that stuff. I also have an email list where I send out, I have a couple different ones, one for Alaska, one for Washington. The Washington one is like local hikes that are good right now. You can sign up for those on the website. And then on Instagram, it's Ordinary Adventures PNW. No punctuation. Like, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah. So
that's awesome.
it.
Well, thank you so much. It truly has been a pleasure speaking
guys.
with you and
Thanks for having
sharing
me.
all of your knowledge. It's been awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks again. We're
Bye.
out.